But the big thing that I really, really enjoyed was the fact that all of this set up a massive stage for them to show off their prospects. For an organization in transition to be able to close the chapter on a big piece of their history while also showcasing a big piece of their future, which is exactly what they did, I think was tremendous. And it was at every level, right? You look at the goaltending, and Kyle Dubas even said when he was asked about this in his introductory press conference, he said, a big part of this is for him to be around the young guys and kind of impart some of that wisdom. And that's exactly what happened. He was hip and hip with Sergei Murashov, who by all accounts is the Penguins' next big thing in net. They were hip to hip. They were side by side all week, and they split the net on Saturday night. Sergei Murashov coming out and playing very well, giving up one goal in the 2 periods of time that he was able to play. But even that one goal, not really his fault, really. But the opportunity for him to learn from Marc-Andre Fleury, just as Kyle Dubas had hoped, I think that was tremendous. And this is a guy that there's people saying, man, it looks like he could be one of the Penguins' best 2 goaltenders right now. Maybe he should start the season at the NHL level. I don't know if that's going to be the case because let's face it, the kid is very important to the Penguins' future. Are they really going to push him a little bit too fast in a position that they're going to have to be very careful about? I'm not quite sure. Do I expect him to make his NHL debut at some point this season? Yeah, I would say so. I would say that, that might not even be a bold prediction, but I would say that there is a likely possibility that Sergei Murashov plays in NHL action this season. Will he do it coming out of camp? That feels less likely. Again, just feels less likely because of the guys that they're going to want to they're going to want to see have opportunities early in the season. Guys like Jari, guys like Artur Shilovs, but getting Sergei Murashov that start in front of that crowd, showing him, hey, this is what you could be playing in front of if things turn around. This is what could be yours, essentially like a Lion King moment of Marc-Andre Fleury sitting next to Sergei Murashov and saying, everything the light touches in PPG Paints Arena, it could be yours. All these chants of Fleury, Fleury, Fleury. It could be changed to Sergei, Sergei, Sergei. And I think a lot of people expect that. So getting him that opportunity to be in that position, to make that start, and to play in front of that fan base is something that I think was a maybe not large part of the storyline this weekend, but is certainly an important part of the storyline. And it wasn't just Sergei Murashov. I mentioned it's at all 3 levels. On the defensive side of things, Harrison Brunicke and Owen Pickering have quickly ascended the headline board of Penguins training camp. These two, speaking of side by side, speaking of hip to hip, these two have been attached at the hip since training camp began little over a week ago, excuse me. It's starting to look more and more that this is a real pairing, definitely by next season, but maybe, just maybe, if they force the issue, because Kyle Dubas has said on multiple occasions, it is going to be a competitive camp. We want to take the players that perform the best and earn the spots into the regular season with the big squad. Could that be Owen Pickering and Harrison Brunicke? More than likely, Owen Pickering, yes. But Harrison Brunicke is in a weird spot because, yeah, he's having a tremendous training camp. He had a tremendous training camp last year, but they still ended up sending him down as part of the last cuts in quotes, of the season. Could it be a similar situation? Maybe, but maybe, just maybe, Pens pull the trigger. Pickering looks ready, and I think he'll be given opportunities this year. Brunicke looks ready, but again, when you look at the Penguins and where they're currently at, is it all in for this season? No, it's all in to build it in a way that, as Kyle Dubas has mentioned, that will be stable and be able to have them be competing for Stanley Cups. I was going to say competitors, which is the same thing, but competing for Stanley Cups perennially. That's what he's aiming for. So he needs to build a strong foundation. If he's going to do that, usually you can't be calling up guys before they're ready. And if he calls up Harrison Brunicke Maybe it's just for that first 9 games to see how he acclimates, to see if he can carry over this preseason performance into the NHL level whenever the lights start to get a little bit brighter. But I really think that the longer we go on and the longer these two are not just staple gun together, but being put into positions like they were on Saturday night, where it was a featured pairing on a big stage, and they succeeded. That's the other big part about this. Harrison Brunicke looked really good. Owen Pickering, as he's looked all camp, looked confident with the puck, looked confident without the puck. He just looked like a different version of himself, a more complete version of himself. If they can keep doing that and showcasing it whenever they get opportunities like they got on Saturday, that's a huge thing, not just for the training camp battles, but that's a huge thing for the health of this franchise going forward. Those two are going to be a big piece of whatever this defense looks like in the short term and long term future. So if they're able to step forward and step up and get that experience this year, even if it's just a 9 or less game sample size together, that being a pairing potentially going forward is nothing but great for the Penguins. Now, the last thing I'll mention as far as players that got those opportunities, you look at the forward side. Ville Koivunen scores a goal. That's one of the things that I kept saying on Saturday leading up to that game. I said, I just want one of these young guys who are getting this opportunity to grab it and get themselves a big moment. Well, that person ended up being Ville Koivunen, somebody who, as time goes on, I'm getting more and more confident that he's going to be a force this season. And again, it's only preseason, so you have to take everything with a little grain of salt. But he looks good. He's been given great opportunities. He's been earning more opportunities with the opportunities he's been given. He's playing with the big guns, and he's not looking out of place whatsoever. Scores a huge goal, ends up being the goal that kind of puts the knife in the back of the Columbus Blue Jackets in this one, and has himself a moment in front of one of the most raucous crowds he's probably played in front of in his entire career. Avery Hayes, Tristan Brose, both out there. I thought they both looked solid in this one. And then of all the forwards, the young ones at least, that stood out, no one stood out more than first round pick Ben Kindel. Yeah, you could argue about, what's his skating look like? What's this look like? What's that look like? He's not a finished product. Of course he's not a finished product. He's 18 years old, and he was drafted less than 4 months ago to this organization. But once again, to be on that stage, to have that pressure on you, and to be able to perform the way that he performed, he opened my eyes. He opened my eyes, and I'm very excited to follow along with his season as he heads back to the CHL. So the rosters are going to start getting smaller and smaller. They did cut about, I think, a little over 12, maybe 15 players off of their training camp roster as Wilkes-Barre Scranton's training camp gets underway, a little east in the state. But that roster is going to keep getting smaller and smaller, and these competitions are just going to keep heating up even more as we get closer to that roster deadline to see who starts to win some of these training camp battles. Is it some of these young guys like an Avery Hayes, like a Tristan Brose, two guys that are fighting to get their first NHL action in a regular season? They want to make those NHL debuts in New York on opening night on national television. That's what they're fighting for. And as we go through this week, we'll get to see just how close they can get, if not, if they can actually crack the roster and get a jersey for that opening night matchup.